Hi there, and welcome back to another weekly episode of On Repeat with me, Ellie Rashid.
And me, Hattie Winter. And this week, our lovely guest is the very talented Meena Ysanne, aka I Love Strings.
Yes, she is a New York-based composer, arranger, producer, and violinist. And she's worked, recorded, and toured with some incredible names such as Smashing Pumpkins, Christina Perri, and Tiesto.
Indeed, she has. Those are amazing names, and it doesn't stop there. She has an equally impressive resume composing soundtracks for commercials, TV, and films. Her early work was first found in the most syndicated travel show in the world, which is Lonely Planet, and she's since gone on to work with the likes of Tilda, Swinton, and Eckhardt. She's recently also composed music for a very beautiful Vans advert.
How exciting. Yeah, I'm also really excited for her new ambient track, which is going to be released in early 2021. It sounds really weird saying 2021. It feels like,
oh gosh, it really does.
2020 hasn't even happened. But yeah, it's being released by a UK label, which is called Sister Music London. And we're getting really geared up to have a listen.
In this episode, we speak about composing soundtracks and think about a day in the life of her work. Also, what it's like to be an artist in New York City in 2020, plus how Meena's experience travelling has shaped what she does and how she works. Not only that, but I will also note that in this episode we speak about music and activism, which are two extremely connected themes. It's very fitting because we are actually recording this introduction on the evening of a very monumental US election. And I definitely urge you to go to Meena's website and check out her page on BIPOC. You can learn about some resources and organisations and just some BIPOC creators. I think it's really important that we all go and learn more about each other and support each other. You can find that page at ilovestrings.com/BIPOC, and we will put the link in our show notes as well as on our Instagram.
I loved this interview because I felt like we really heard some things that were from the heart, and massive respect to Meena for sharing some of this. I think it was really, really important to get to understand where she was coming from, both personally and musically. So big shout out to Meena for that. And also she just offers some sound advice on how you might want to go about edging into the niche elitist world that is the music industry. So
yeah, I mean, particularly for us, I mean, well, particularly for me, like I don't know loads about kind of composing and like the soundtrack kind of side. For me, it does feel like such a world away from what I kind of know. So it's super interesting and fascinating to learn more about something that feels quite far away.
Sweet. Yeah, I know what you mean. But like, hopefully people listening to this will also feel the same, whether they're familiar with it or not. So let us know. You know what to do.
Enjoy.
My name is Meena Ysanne. I'm at I Love Strings, and I'm a composer and an arranger, and a musician. I play too.
So you're in New York.
I am, yeah.
Now, but you were born in London, right?
Yes, I was. Yeah, I was born and raised in London.
Whereabouts? Which bit of London?
Born in Stoke Newington before Stoke Newington was Stoke Newington. I've got to say,
it got gentrified. Oh yeah,
yeah, big time. It was different. I was born there, but I didn't grow up there. I grew up further north. I moved. This is a thing with my geography, to preempt the questioning, even that it's like I have moved all the time for a lot. So the geography of my life is not like, it's really not simple. And yeah, so I was in London. I lived South London, North London, East London. I was in Brick Lane. I was in Camden, Brixton, like Soho for 3 years. Tottenham sort of area, Edmonton. Like I was all over the place. And then I started traveling with music. So in my teens was the first time I went to Europe with music, and then I was just like all over Europe. And then it was like Japan, India, South America, New York in the 90s. back and forward, like always my base being London, but a lot of time traveling and not in London, but London being my base. And then I went on a trip to LA for 3 weeks in 2004. And that turned into, I've been here for 16 years in the States. So I was in LA for like a decade, and then moved from LA to New York, but always within that time period, still moving around. When I went to LA, I didn't go back to England for 8 years though. So, you know, I am an American citizen now. I became a citizen through the process of being here and self-sponsoring and going through that whole thing. And so, yeah, that's the geography.
It's amazing. That's so many places.
If you don't mind me asking, was there a reason why, like when you were so young, why you were moving around so much? Because you said you were working a bit when you were a teenager, but when you were a child, it sounds like you've literally been everywhere.
So when I was a child, I lived in the family home, and that was in one place. And then when I ran away from home, and I think that was the impetus. Honestly, you know, I've been talking to my therapist about it this summer, but it's like I didn't stop. So I made I remember the travel impetus came before the music. So it was like I always played music, I always loved music, but actually the love of travel, I think, did make me think, okay, what kind of career can I form for myself where I'm still going to be able to travel? I'm going to be able to move around even more than I am now. And not just move around, but it's like when you're making music and you're moving around, like if you're doing shows or, you know, there's many different reasons within music that you need to move around. And you're having a connection with people, whether it's the audience or, you know, people you're collaborating with, musicians or industry folk or, you know, so it was wanting to I didn't want to just roam aimlessly. I wanted to have a life where it was built in to be connecting and really working with people and living with people and being in a place, lots of places. And so that was absolutely a reason why I then was like, okay, yeah, this thing that I'm good at, I love doing it. I believe I can make it happen. But I'm really, a lot of it was around because I want to be everywhere. And it's just, you know, anyone who's been more than one place, which are most people these days, knows how inspiring it is to go somewhere. And for me, the idea of like, you know, being in one place for 50 weeks of the year and then going somewhere else for 2 weeks and sitting on a beach or something I was just like, and I want to build my life around geographical changes.
Yeah, around the moving. And then when you said like playing music, what were you playing? Were you playing instruments? Were you in a band?
All different things. So the earliest tours was with classical music, classical orchestras. So, you know, I went to like France, Germany, there was like Italy tour. So that was all like classical music. And then I started plugging in my violin and putting effects units and stuff and playing with DJs and electronic producers before I then started making my own productions and stuff. But we talk about the very, very early days, like my teen years. So then I found myself in Japan when I was still a teen. I was probably like 19 or something, plugged into a DJ mixer, a friend that I still have. And that was the trip where I was just like, I need to get, you know, how do you say it? Like just disciplined around making it happen, not just like rely on like, oh, this is fun. This, you know, there's that beginning of your career where you're just kind of not motivated, not together, and you're just kind of stuff happens. And I was like, no, I want to make those things happen. And that's when I started producing myself and, you know, starting to craft a career and make some choices about it. Because I was like, no, this is great.
Yeah, definitely. Very conscious. And you're so lucky as well to do that at that age. Because I think that I'm still in that bit, being like, I'll just let it fall into place.
Yeah, so so easy to do that with music as well. I just wondered about when you were talking about running away from home and things like that. Is that like literally you ran away?
Yeah.
Or so you ran away and then you sort of just because you went to the Royal College.
I did.
Of music, right? So how did that all happen?
So I basically, I don't,
You don't have to say
I don't want to go too deep into my personal shit.
That's okay. I'm just connecting something.
Yeah, the living are involved, so I don't want to go too deeply into it, but
that's okay.
Out of respect. But I don't think it's sort of disrespectful to say, you know, that there was a general feeling from my family that it would be probably a wiser move if I wasn't a musician. I'd announced to everybody that I wanted to be a musician when I was living at home and at school. And so then they stopped my lessons and banned me from playing because they thought it would be a better idea for me to get a profession that is more likely to make money. So I understand that it came from a caring place, but it also had no understanding of, you know, my wishes, and also the fact that when you are a musician, you just have to be a musician. It's not even a choice, actually. I really see it as similar to being gay. Like if you're gay, it's really inconvenient. You know, a lot of people, they might want to choose not to be gay because it's more convenient. You can just fit in with normal life and, like, you know, have a regular family and everything's normal. There's no ceilings to your progress in life, and, you know, but problem is you're gay, so you have to be gay. And likewise with music, it's like I really do see it as a similar thing. So anyway, I then started getting around the ban. My teacher secretly continued teaching me without getting payment at this point because she saw that I was talented and deserved her time. And yeah, she was amazing.
That's incredible.
And I practiced all the time outside of that. And then I put myself through auditions for college. And then once I got in, so they thought I'd stopped playing for a couple of years, but I was like doing it. I was skipping school lessons as well to make it happen. So I was constantly having like band practice or something. Like every lesson I'd be like, oh, sorry, I've got to go to band practice, whatever. Like nobody kind of tallied the thing together because, you know, anyway. So I got all the practicing, got myself into Royal College of Music, then announced it, did that for a while, and then while I was at home, and then ran away from all of it. So I did not complete college, I didn't complete school, and I ran away to the squat scene at the time in London, which was amazing. It was incredibly creative and inspiring, you know, a ton of music and art and like everything. So that was my finishing school. Yeah. So I got enough at the Royal College. I got enough of a formal training in composition. So, I know how to do the fundamental stuff. And I think I actually, even though it wasn't planned this way, I got out at a good time before I just became a classical composer, which I'm certainly not. So I think I got enough of the foundation to allow me to, write sheet music and be able to conduct orchestras and stuff, but not so much that I'm like, kind of really classical and kind of a bit staid and whatever, without
rigid maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, bless those guys. I love that stuff, but like, that's not what I do. What I do is definitely not, it has more fluidity to it. So yeah.
That's really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that, by the way. Like, I know that I'm sorry to feel like if it feels like I was prodding you. I just wanted to sort of understand in conjunction with the music that you write. Actually, that's kind of what I was thinking. And I mean, I think that I know that everyone has different stories and they all have their own complex intricacies. But I certainly feel like a lot of people, and I don't know if it's generational or just the way people are brought up, cultural, whatever, but there are so many issues with people who have issues anyway with musician as a profession, and it's still happening now. Like, more and more people have portfolio careers, more people are able to do what they need to do artistically. But you're totally right, like that was what you wanted to do, and you almost feel like if it's what you want to do, there's nothing else you can do, and if it's something that you want to do and that you're good at, then you will do it well. But it's an amazing story. Like, yeah, thank you for sharing it.
I'm the bridge between orchestral strings and every other kind of music. So it's like when people see an acoustic guitar, they don't go, oh, do you play classical? Now, they could do, because there's a whole world of classical music for acoustic guitar. It's great. But generally people think it's like singer-songwriter or something if they see a guitar. So when people see violins, they always say, oh, it's classical, in the opposite way. And it's like, well, actually, there's violins in everything. I mean, like, you know, like Motown has strings in the soul, you know, soul music, and like literally everything, every kind of music. There's not one kind of music where there's not a history of strings in it. Like you could name any genre, they all have it. And so like I basically have done stuff in every genre apart from classical with it, you know, since a long time, you know, since that original training. And so that in terms of the notation, you know, if I'm playing myself, then I don't do notated. I improvise, and my sound is not classical. I do not sound like a classical player. And if I want something that sounds very classical and, you know, tight, and then I will hire someone to do that. And I'll do that when I need a string section. So if I've got like a rock or EDM or jazz or reggae or like anything artist and they want strings, then I'll write the charts and get some performers in it. It can be like up to a symphony orchestra. Like I've worked with, you know, a large like 44-piece symphony orchestra a number of times and done that for, you know, artists that are known. And and I'll do just like a solo improvised line. It's like anything strings.
Do you have any genres that you particularly like working in, either because of like the parameters it has or the limitations or just like the challenges it brings? Is there anything that you particularly like working with strings?
I don't know in terms of genre. I mean, I love soundtracks. That's really obviously where I'm focused right now. And that in itself is not a genre. I mean, soundtrack literally means it's every different kind. And that's kind of why I like it, is that it has this flexibility. I in terms of artistic collaborations, you know, I've had an ongoing relationship with the Smashing Pumpkins for many years, and that again is not a genre. It's everything from like a solo singer-songwriter thing through to like synth pop right now. So, you know, that's a, not that I'm working on the synth pop thing right now, but it's clear. But like, you know, yeah, it's broad. So I guess not being boxed in is what I like.
It's so it's amazing to have these genre talks, because it's something we've been doing on this podcast quite a lot, and we love the idea of sort of challenging genres and the boundaries between them. And I love that you've taken a sort of what's associated with being like a Western art instrument and kind of like taken it out of its box, like you said, when everyone expects it to be classical, but actually it can be anything, and reimagining it. I absolutely love that. And I wonder if when you were maybe like at the Royal College or before then or after then, like, did you ever have like this sort of light bulb moment where you were like, do you know what? I'm going to try like different genres, or like, were you listening to different genres? Because how do you become, I know like with arranging, like I've mainly arranged like jazz things and some orchestral things, but you have to know your shit when you're doing it. And if you say you're doing like reggae, jazz, like rock and everything, was it a lot of listening? Like, how did you get to know all these different genres, and when did that sort of idea come where you were like, I'm going to put strings into all these things and use it in all these different ways?
So most of my experience is post-college, and although the college they did give me, it's always worth mentioning in a bio or something, because it did give me a foundation in Western classical music and in notation. Most of my clients don't read and write. That's where it's kind of worth saying, no, I really know how to read and write, and I'm fluent at doing that. But in terms of the classical thing, like, just to be really clear, I've just not done anything in the classical world for 30 years. I'm not a classical anything. So I guess the light bulb moment was when I left that whole scenario. I left college, home, everything, went into the squat scene of London and didn't look back. So continued on the road, always curious about everything and traveling geographically as well. So, you know, I went to Japan. I organically, by being in Japan, discovered a whole bunch of different styles of music. Lots of electronic stuff was what I discovered there. Also, it's not Japanese music, but I got like deep into kind of spacier areas of jazz. Like Sun Ra was a popular kind of artist, even though he's not anything to do with Japan. And Alice Coltrane, and there was this whole kind of space jazz thing going on there. And then I was in India. Obviously, I did discover a lot of Indian music, but then you're like meeting people on the road. So it's not just the countries; it's also so it might be people from the West, or it might be people from like Latin America, and we're all like traveling somewhere. So, you know, it's having a curious mind. That's really what it came down to, and that's kind of the mindset. So when I go places, or right now, I mean, at the moment, because we've not been going places, right? And but I've been going down the Bandcamp black hole. You know, it's like, I mean, the Bandcamp's insane right now. You just like keep going forever, and you are sonically traveling. So I think it's just, you know, having that curiosity, and I think as time's gone on, like I have I guess a gratitude as well for what we can do and what we have. And I think that came out of always not having much. But like since the internet came in, like everybody has, I mean, I was saying the Bandcamp, it's like anyone who has a smartphone, it's just like we're living in a time where like this it's just so easy to access, and also so easy to create. And so cheap to do that. Like the entry point for everybody is like, and I remember when the entry point was not low, when I bought my first studio stuff, which I bought secondhand from a friend who gave me a deal, but still it was like all, you know, it was so much money. So the democracy of now, and the democracy of living and listening and all of it, like I think it's in this time, you know, it's so easy to focus on how hard things are, because 2020 has been a extremely difficult year for me, I've got to say, along with everyone else. Like, it's not that I'm sat here in like loads of time with you know, like I've got some private income and I'm making sourdough bread. It's really not that. It's been a really, really hard year, but within the context of, you know, and on the bright side, like it's never been easier in some ways still.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, coming from like the music tech side this year, I think there's been a really big uptake in people wanting to try and create music. And yes, some people I'm sure will like take it and run with it. I'm sure some people will try it, never do it again. Like that's absolutely fine. But it's the fact that now there is the choice that you can do that quite easily. There's like so many places you can learn from. YouTube has got million, like you said, there's the Bandcamp wormhole, there's a YouTube wormhole. You can learn everything, and it's amazing. There's so much like skill and share kind of swapping going on. You're right, it is a really good time it's just a really good thing to be focusing on. It is very easy to be like everything's crap. There's actually a lot of really good things happening, particularly in the music sphere. Yeah,
and also with the current, you know, political focus of 2020, you know, there is a acknowledgement and a growing of all of the people who are usually just not part of the picture. You know, I mean, I remember when that was so a thing, and, you know, like there were so many boundaries to being accepted as even being with the cool kids. You know, now like everybody can go to the cool kids because it's on YouTube. It's like literally there, and you can post your shit there, and people are just gonna enjoy your stuff or not, depending on the merit of the work. And
yeah, you can always find your own cool kids, and people are always going to find you cool, which is really nice. And actually, talking about politics, going back to your first point, and you said that you helped with this music protest. I suppose I don't really know like what that kind of means. I'd love to have like a bigger like picture of what it is. I'm trying to work out what that kind of looks like.
So Elijah McClain played violin, and so basically in the town where he lived and died, Aurora, Colorado, which is a small town in Colorado, some people there, some black men, organized a vigil where people would play violins together. And so for there, they were playing sheet music, and it was just kind of like, you know, popular kind of songs that everybody might know. And so it was easy to, you know, play along when you've got a mixed ability group of people. But excuse me, I saw that was going to happen and thought, we need to amplify this message and do this in New York City. Also specifically because two things: we have obviously a lot of musicians here, and a lot of people in general who were feeling very strongly this summer and still feel strongly about, you know, everything that was going on this summer and all of the issues. And also we have media. And I was really aware of that. I was really aware of the importance of, you know, getting the message so that Elijah's mother could see some justice for her son. So yeah, I basically just put the call out. It was a social media fueled thing, and a lot of string players came along. But the way we did it was, as I said, it was led by two Black men, and we had a chat around. There's a guy that I work with called Butch Morris, who's a Black man who's a conductor, a jazz conductor. I'd worked with him in London in the 90s. He's now passed, but he taught a thing called conduction, which is a way that improvising musicians can play together, having never known each other before, never met, not having any conversations, so that it's a pure concert form, basically using body movements as a way to combine everyone. So the leaders of the orchestra with their bodies express things. They played, and you could see if it's a high note or a low note, the way they're kind of holding themselves. And so the whole orchestra kind of followed that visually as well as with their ears. And it really was one of the most, I mean, obviously it was we were not there for beauty. We were there for a message. But actually, I think having beauty is really important in terms of, there were two things. It was a protest, but it was a vigil. I wanted to feel that this young man was honored and that he had a beautiful thing happen. And also because of the need for, you know, people to want to talk about it and report about it, so that there was some, you know, closure and some justice, which still hasn't quite happened, by the way, because in the States, nothing's really happened. But that was all of the ideation around the event. Yeah.
Journeys and travel, it really is like so intertwined into everything that you do, and clearly like it seeps through to your creative process and the way that you imagine things, which I think is awesome. And I think something that like really struck me is when you were talking about having to travel and now having the internet, and how that's sort of a version of everyone traveling together in a way.
Yeah, I mean, that's one option. But actually, I mean, I've been traveling within New York City. It's like that you could, if you leave the house, and because of the restrictions of what you can do, but open air has meant that, again, the democracy that I'm talking about, it's like going to spaces online or offline where we can, in a you know, there's no kind of barriers, financial barriers, or, you know, technological barriers or whatever. So, you know, physically, the park here, like there's two parks, Tompkins Square and Seward Park, where I've been hanging out. Tompkins Square, there's been shows like 2-3 times a week, people going down there and playing. And I ended up playing with a band, and everybody's Latin, but they're all from different countries. So the lead is from Puerto Rico. There's like they're all from different Latin countries, and like his wife's from Chile, and so the audience is really mixed. Everything's mixed, and it's like this is why we pay rent in New York City, is because we're all here. But usually there's this kind of weird, you know, when in pre-COVID life, it's like there's financial barriers that show who's going to go where. But now it's like whoever you are, like basically your choice is the park or nothing, pretty much.
Yeah,
so
right.
So come on down.
Yeah, so we're all there, and it's like it's been, the street life has been so great, and just in the street, just hanging out, you know, on my street, on the stoop, like people were there, like anyone, but it's really warm and open, and you know, it's just been really inspiring.
It's really interesting how you're talking about these different spaces, and it's interesting talking about like the internet as a space, and then like you said, the park, where there are like it's like its own safe space in the way that there are no boundaries there. And thinking about, you know, all these things like with lockdown considered, and also like when you were traveling before that and years before, like for so much of your life, I'm just like, this is sort of just interesting. Like, I'm just thinking about the in between the spaces and in between, like the actual journey itself. Because we've spoken to a few guests who've talked about journey, and they imagine their music to be listened to on a journey. And I wonder, when you're going in between those spaces, do you have any music that you listen to on the journey? Is it different from what you make?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if many people really listen to their own music all the time. That's kind of, you know, because it's what you're, you know, then it's work. Like, you're going to be, you know, assessing it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I have a lot of silence in general. Like I don't have background. Obviously, I don't have background music while I'm working. I mean, you guys, if you're typing or something, you've got background music. I'm making music, so I can't have background music. So I generally listen to music on the go. That's pretty much the only time that I really, or I'll listen now and then I'll put on a record, or when I'm cooking is another time actually. But definitely in the car, on the plane, these are times for deep listening and making really considered choices. But sometimes it's like, if I'm going on the way to work with someone, then I'm going to be listening to that band's music, and I'm going to be listening either to the unreleased stuff that we're going to be working on, so I'm basically working in my head, or I'm going to be listening to their back catalogue, so I you know, get immersed in the world of that artist, so that I'm, you know, prepared. But I mean, I've done soundtracks to a bunch of travel shows. Like I worked on the Lonely Planet Guides shows, so you know, it also translates into that, and it really depends on what kind of travel we're talking about. It's like if I'm driving from, you know, one American city to another, that's a very different kind of travel to, you know, if I'm on a bus in Nepal, like, so.
All depends. Yeah, it's I was going to say it's funny, but obviously it makes sense. You're obviously not listening to music when you work. And then I find, obviously for me, it's the opposite. I work in like a busy office. We've always got various radio stations on, Spotify's on, SoundCloud's on. It's like sound all day. And then I find that when I go home, I either listen to the radio or like I kind of have nothing. I'm kind of like sounded out. I'm like overwhelmed by sounds all day. Or, you know, and you come back from a festival and you're like, wait, everything hurts. I just want silence and like rest.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think silence is definitely underrated, right?
Yeah, I mean, I do it, and most musicians I know have a lot of silence because we really love music. So the idea of like just kind of a wallpaper that's not good music if you're not in you know, drawn into it. Almost, it's just like, it's almost a definition of like that kind of background stuff. It's like, it's not very good then if you're not, you know, engaged and you're emotionally put in a different space. You know, it's just kind of strange music. But yeah, so I think, you know, a lot of people I know, it's in this space, silence is the main, that's the wallpaper thing, is just silence, and then listening to a really good record, or you know, if you go down the Bandcamp hole, whatever it is, but just like then you're actually listening.
There is also something really nice about listening to like a whole album. I feel like right now, just doing it all on shuffle, it's so easy, but it's really nice being like, I'm going to listen to one person's album that has been put together in the order that they have done for a reason. It's
intended.
Yeah, it's a nice, refreshing change, because I'm definitely like a big shuffler, which is also fine, but it
Yeah.
is really nice when you have just one thing. Yeah, we were talking to Rob Howitt on a couple of weeks ago. He's a future guest, but he like runs this venue, and he was saying that it's under a train line, and it's like, you know, like, oh, we've got 4 minutes, so like go in between like all the things. But I was just thinking, I was listening back to a couple of our episodes, and where I live in Tottenham has been kind of quiet, but like not particularly quiet. And there's definitely like sounds of sirens I can hear in the back of the interviews, and you probably see my cat come up and like he just sits in front of like drinks my water, even though he's got his own. But yeah, it's never quite silence. But that's quite nice.
Never.
No,
But I
indeed.
think it's amazing to even be able to sort of like notice that. It, like that, even that's refreshing, like being able to pick out the tiny, tiny little sounds. Is that ever something that you've like sort of you incorporate? I guess like with the stuff that you've done with movement, I guess movement does actually make certain sounds as well. Have you ever considered that to be part of your music?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I just did a soundtrack for an animation, came out like I think last week. It's a fashion brand called Totem, and they put out a new handbag, and so it's a hand-drawn animation by actually a British animator called Jo Ratcliffe, who I've worked with before. And the soundtrack, she said she wanted to get the feeling of New York into there, so I put in some street recordings. So it's like the sound of traffic, but you know, there's that American tone to traffic. You can tell that it's New York, and if it's like the yellow cabs or whatever it is, but like yeah, so I had the sound of the streets in there, and then layered some other stuff on top. So yeah, I mean, definitely that I'm aware of. I mean, I do kind of, you know, it's basically sound design as well as composition. I did another animation recently where it was both. Like I recorded a kind of lo-fi hip hop track and then put in a whole bunch of sound design to bring to life the animation. So it's not like real life, but you know, it's that you can see popcorn happening on screen. So I like recorded some popcorn and then chopped up the sound of the recording so that each of the popcorns popped at the right time, you know, so and good. Like a bunch of different, you know, there were fish flopping around in the animation. So I kind of did some squelchy noises and then put them in the right place. And
that's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
I really like that. It's probably actually a good segue into your work, which is very, very cool. Been watching some stuff. I recently watched the video with the little Chanel like illustrations.
That's Jo. Cool. Different ad. That one was for Chanel like two years ago. But yeah, same artist.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. It's really cool. I love that kind of style of like very like pencily kind of brushes.
Yeah, she's amazing.
I'm definitely going to check out afterwards. I love a good illustrator. But yeah, you've got a very big portfolio of work with sort of like TV, film, I guess like, I want to say like almost just like just visual kind of like stuff. Do you have any favourite projects that you've worked on?
Favorite projects?
Can you not pit them against each other? Like,
yeah, I mean, I like there's lots of different projects I was really happy to be a part of. Recently, I did a commercial for Vans with a director called Joel Fox, who's just super inventive, like funny. He's hilarious. Like all his films are very quirky. So that one was a really great project to work on.
That's one with all the sort of like flowers like blossoming from the shoe. Like
crystals. He basically
crystals.
It was like his little science experiment. He got his favorite pair of Vans. He was kind of pissed because he was like, I wish I could have used just a new pair of Vans, but like for the aesthetic, I kind of needed a worn-in pair. So like my favorite really worn-in ones. He then grew crystals. He put them in this like, you know, bath of like various chemicals so that the crystals came out. And I did this weird sound of the crystals, which wasn't real. It was like me making up what the crystals might sound like if they weren't silent. So that one was fun. And I did a couple of feature films, and so they were fun in a big way. I was actually meant to do another feature this year. That was my plan for 2020 that got pulled because 2020. So, you know, I look forward to that one coming back round when they're able. But yeah, I mean, I like doing small videos as well as doing larger feature things. There was a project, an art project for MoMA with Tilda Swinton in it, and just because it was Tilda, it was like exciting to
yeah,
do
of
that.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, carry on.
Well, I don't know, like,
Oh, sorry.
what else you? I mean, I could just list
No,
stuff I've done, but like, there's been a lot of fun in the last how many years? Like, yeah.
Oh, good. No, I thought I interrupted you. I was going to say, is there like a big difference maybe towards your like approach to the project or something that is long form compared to short form?
Yeah. I mean, there is a longer timeline. There's a much longer conversation with the director, and there's different budget constraints. So usually a short form thing, it's going to be just me working on it. For a feature film, there's usually going to be the ability to have other people pulled in as well as myself. So I guess that's and then in the conversation, you kind of figure out, you spend more time, because it's a longer project with different moods. So, you literally have to have, it's like, the length of X many short films. So each of those bits of music, you need to figure out what you're going to do. So yeah, a lot more talk.
Yeah.
The first feature I did, I had breakfast with the director. I think it was twice a week. We used to go off to a coffee shop and meet before he'd selected the actors. It's like composers often brought in right at the beginning. So you've got a script and you've got a director and a producer, and that's it. And they've not started to audition for the actors yet, so that you can start to build the world with them, because it's an emotional world that I'm building basically. And so it's, it needs to grow at the same time as the director's having the visual for it, really. And often they do have notes for the audio as well. They've got references or just emotional notes that they want you to take on board. So, we started having breakfast together. I think it was twice a week, way before anything happened. And then for that project, I was on location for a month with the actors, living in a house. So it was the three of us, the two leads and me, in a house together, so that we could all understand what the work was and what we were building. It's whereas a short film, none of that has ever happened.
Yeah. I don't think I knew it was such a long process. I don't know why. I kind of thought that there'd be like more maybe like visual to work with when you were creating sound for it. I don't think I'd necessarily realised that, but now it makes perfect sense that like composers would help build the emotion.
It depends. Another feature I worked on, I was brought in last. So the whole movie had been done, and I was brought in when the editor was brought in. And so then it was like a completely different process. Both of these ways of working are completely acceptable and fine. And I came up with work I was happy with both. That's the noise we were talking about. There's construction going on now. I wonder when that was going to happen.
Perfect.
Yeah. So yeah, there's no one way of working, and every director's different, every project's different. So if you've got the same director but they're in a different project, it might be there's a completely different way of working again. Also the confidence and familiarity with your own work, it's if they know your stuff or not, and how long your conversation's been happening, or if you just have chemistry. So if there is no one way of it working. I think it's unusual, the one that I described where I was on location and having breakfast with the guy all the time, and I think that was unusually integrated, but the story, the narrative's about music, so that's where he needed to make sure that everything was perfect and his vision was going to be realized.
Do you have many, or is, there must be, but is there much like kind of, not animosity, but is it kind of difficult to bring someone's kind of vision to life?
That's the job. There's no animosity whatsoever. What I'm there for is that's literally what I want to do. I don't want to bring my own thing to the table. No, that's a solo record. No, there's a zero wish for me to battle with anyone. I just don't want to. It's not that I'm being good or I'm being polite or something. It's just like I literally enjoy bringing out somebody else's vision in that space, because I know there's going to be another time for me to bring out my own vision. It's like, so there's no like sacrifice. What I'm there to do at that point is to try and figure out and then create that perfectly. And that's what I take a pride in doing when I'm working on a soundtrack.
It seems like not niche, but I know a lot of musicians who really want to kind of get into that kind of world and don't really know kind of where to start or how to practice even.
Well, I believe I'm right in saying still that it's less than 5% of composers are female. So it's just worth stating that, you know, as a little thing. Basically, how you get into it is because you know somebody, is generally how it happens. And I think that's why the figure is low, because who's making films? So you just say it's not a conspiracy. There's no like awful plot, but it's just you literally want to just work with somebody that you know and trust, and you've hung together and you probably had some beers together, and that's where the barrier probably is. But for me, I was playing in a club, so I was just out making music in a space in London, and a complete stranger heard the music that I was making and came up to me after my set and said, "I like your music. Would you be interested in doing a soundtrack?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm interested. Let's talk." So then, you know, I can't remember if a call or whatever it was, and he told me about the project, and you know, I did the project, and he thought it was great, and I got another project, and then suddenly I'm rolling in a space where there's filmmakers, and I'm suddenly in that space. So I think it's, you know, worth noting that that's how you kind of get into the spaces, by being in the space. And so if you know that, then you can maybe take a shortcut and just be in the space. And right now, I think the barrier is lower than it has been before in terms of the internet. Again, it's like there's all this access that's usually really gated. But if you know, just use a Google search and find places where filmmakers might be hanging out online, and go to those places, which is often in a free Zoom call, and then make a connection. Don't pitch your stuff to people, because there's nothing more off-putting than somebody just pitching you. But, you know, just finding talented people whose stuff you resonate with, and connecting with them, and then slowly pitching them at some point if they don't pitch you. But they might pitch you. It's just like, it's more like, you know, that curiosity of mind is the thing where I think where it comes from more. So yeah, I think there's a lot of ability now that there maybe wasn't in 2019 for people to break into this space.
Yeah, it's a good point you say. I think definitely about connecting. I mean, I've even found it with like my role, and although it's in music, but kind of more behind the scenes, and people are like, "Yeah, but how do you do it?" I'm like, there's particularly people, want to get into the behind the scenes bit. I'm like, there's places like LinkedIn, and there's anyone in any music label, or 90% of them are on LinkedIn. People love to talk about themselves. Just shoot them a message; they will answer you. Like somebody will answer you. I don't know. If somebody asked me about my job, I'm more than happy to be like, yeah, like I'll tell you about. It's not very interesting, I'm sure, but I can tell you. And I think it's kind of like just putting yourself out there, and you'll get an answer back at some point.
Absolutely. I feel like so many people who, like you said, who are thinking about maybe pursuing music, or they're scared of it, or maybe people who are and feel a little bit lost, because we all have like those moments where we're like, I'm shit at what I do, or I feel lost, and then like you have other moments where you're like, I'm great, like it's so up and down.
I think that is the main point, actually. It's just, I think working on yourself and working on that inner critic, and maybe the inner critic's right, actually. It's that thing of like listening. It's not always, I don't believe in the like, we've always got to big ourselves up inside and it's all optimism. There is actually, maybe you need to work on your stuff and then approach people. You know, it's like, I was speaking for myself, I'm using the word you, but like, you know, it's addressing when, I definitely shouldn't speak to yourself harshly, but if there is a point, like if you do think it's not quite ready to go yet, then to spend the time and to make it good. And then also simultaneously to build on your own self-esteem and confidence. Yeah.
That's a totally healthy approach. It's like having this perfect balance and almost setting boundaries with yourself.
Earlier on you mentioned you really like soundtracks. Is that what really kind of pushed you into this work like your love of it before, or did you kind of fall in love with it with the more work you did? So
I've always loved watching films, like we all did, right? We all grew up loving watching TV and film and animations and all of that. And yeah, I think that the deeper you get into any medium, the more you appreciate, how fun it is to do, and also the craft of those that came before you. What people are doing it's a great medium. It's lovely. That is the collaboration. I'm generally sat on my own, and the collaboration is with the visual, with the cinematographer and the video and the script and everything that's in there. So yeah, I love it. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Do you have any? Oh no, carry on. No, I thought I interrupted you. Do you have any bits that you're like, I really wish I wrote that? Those things you're like, this is so amazing and it's so all-encompassing. I really wish you could write. Yeah, I don't know if that's a strange question, but there's something you listen to and you're like, this is bloody fantastic.
I mean, I love lots of music, but I don't get like FOMO. I wish it was me. Like, no, not really. Like, it's like, yeah. No, I mean, I love listening to so much different stuff and watching great films, and often I'm sat there thinking, Hilda Godnadottir is the obvious one, Joker, because she's also, I mean, we got a similar lineage. We both work with Genesis Peorage, who I've known forever, and she worked with him too, and we both got cellos and electronics, and she's got like insane success in doing Joker, and I have not reached that pinnacle. So there is, that would be the obvious comparison, but I don't wish that I was her. I don't wish that I'd made her music, but I do absolutely appreciate it in a way that I think I can maybe appreciate it more than many, because I understand the brilliance of it.
Yeah. You understand where it's coming from, and probably all the challenges that probably happened to get it to the place that it's at.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
The bigger picture. No, that's wonderful. And then, I mean, for the final question, it's the classic on repeat question, but who are you keeping on repeat at the moment? Have you got any particular musicians you're listening to, bands?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, here in New York, I mentioned the guys in the park. They're called Pink Louds. It's PINC LOUDS. Pink Louds. They released, I couldn't believe this. It was so genius. In May. So in May, when May 2020, everybody was in lockdown, everyone was miserable, confused, worried, anxious, whatever. They put out this song called Hopscotch. Go see it on YouTube. There's a video and a song. It was just like, how did you, on lockdown, you even did that? Like, and it's so joyous and ridiculous and funny, and exactly what everyone needed. It was just like, oh my God, I can't believe you got that together. So that's been on repeat this summer. I guess I put out a record with a guy called Brendan Edder, so I listened to that a bunch. My friends, the Smashing Pumpkins, have got a new album, just came out, and an EP. The EP In Ashes has a whole video aspect. It's an animation series, so that's on YouTube as well. I've been going down the Bandcamp hole, listening to a lot of IDM and footwork and vaporwave stuff, and then this week Oliver Coates had a record out, so he's another like cello plus electronics kind of guy, so he's got a new record that I have been listening to today. Love it.
That's amazing.
Lovely.
And I actually just realised I do actually have one more question. It's kind of not really a question because I realised I lied. But you said you listened to Amanda's, and she lived in New York like 10 years ago now, I think it was. And obviously New York has changed, and you said you'd love to talk about it. And I don't know if it's possible to kind of say how you kind of think it's different now. I mean, I've never been, so I don't know.
Well, I think that having travelled so much, and that's involved being in places at different eras, different times. So the first time I came to New York was the late 90s. And it's just, I guess, any place that the listener is in now. So you're in Tottenham, wherever the listener is sitting right now, if you think back to 10 years ago, if you were in that same place, it's like, it probably was very different in terms of so many aspects, in terms of the people that live there, in terms of the economics, the general background of the culture, the lack of pandemic, like so many things. And so, whenever you talk about a city, it's always a time and a place intertwined. And so, yeah, New York in the 90s was a completely different thing to New York now. And New York 10 years ago was completely different to now, like even more so, I'd say. So New York 10 years ago was all about money. It was a very rich time for the city. For me, as somebody who wasn't super wealthy at that point, it was a hard time. It was like, there was known as the rich man's playgrounds. That's kind of what people kind of called Manhattan. So, you know, it's like, it was a time of fabulous restaurants. If you had the money, there was all kinds of stuff to do. There was like beautiful restaurants and incredible galleries that sell you very expensive artwork and great designers. And it was a very capitalist moment for New York City. And so if you were on that end of the spectrum, apparently it was super fun. On my end of the spectrum, it was not super fun. It was like basically prohibitive for doing much stuff. And you spent all your time just paying the rent because the rent was super high. So now, well, for starters, in the pandemic, there was a rent freeze or an eviction freeze, not a rent freeze, it was an eviction freeze. So there was some flexibility on the rent. There was unemployment income. Low overheads makes a huge difference to where less affluent people can spend a little time out. So that's where street culture came about, because people could have a little space for free time and there was nowhere to spend your money anyway. So everyone's out on the street and they're hanging and they're playing shows. And then the art galleries were showing stuff through their windows. So, you know, it's just like all that whole kind of entertainment around capitalism thing just disappeared. And so this city is completely different to a year ago, let alone 10 years ago. And now it's never been better. You know, it's like that barrier is just gone. And, you know, and also it's just, you know, people of color feeling so much more confident because of everything that's happened. And so they're more visible. And on my street, there's like so much street art. There's so much graffiti and beautiful, like really, because these came out with like huge boom boxes, a ton of lights, like no thought that the police are going to get anyone. You know, this isn't like come with a spray can and do a quick tag and run away. It's like, spend 7 hours doing a mural and then come back the next day to continue that work, you know, like amazing explosion of creativity.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, Meena. That was amazing.
Yeah, no, it's really lovely to chat with you both. Thanks for having me. I'm happy with it, and I thought you crafted a really lovely interview between you. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, thanks so much. Thank you. Thank you.
So much to Meena for taking the time out to speak to us. We really appreciate it, particularly because it was her lunchtime and it was definitely our evening. So, you know, it's the middle of her day and the end of ours.
Yeah.
It was very helpful, super fascinating to chat to her. And yeah, she's done amazing work. You can find out more from her on her website, which is ilovestrings.com. And that's also her Instagram. We'll have all the links in the show notes.
Yes. And if you want to leave a review, we love to see them.
Oh my God, we do.
And I don't know, maybe if you have any guests that you're really interested in that you might want us to interview, please do let us know, because you know we love to keep it eclectic and it would be really nice to hear, because we love talking to everyone. So
listener requests
indeed. And we've got some really exciting announcements coming up as we get towards the festive season. So do keep your ears peeled. Is that a thing? Keep your ears peeled?
Well, I think so. It should be. It is now.
Cute.
Keep your ears peeled and your eyes open.
Bye everyone. See you next week.
Keep it on repeat.